Back in 2022, the Ford Maverick was one of the hottest vehicles that you can get your hands on because it was good and it was inexpensive. 3 years later, it receives a mid-cycle update along with a couple of new trims. So is this still one of the hottest commodities that you can get your hands on? Let's go for a drive and find out. Not much has changed with the engines of the Ford Maverick. You can still get it as a hybrid or as a gasoline only. This one that I'm driving is the hybrid version, so it has a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder and a couple of electric motors helping it out. Power remains the same at 191 net horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque. It's not very quick, but it has just enough power to get going off the line without impeding anybody behind you, and it has enough power to merge onto a highway without making it feel like as though it's huffing and puffing. Of course, like many other hybrid powertrains, it does use an eCVT to send the power to the wheels, and every time that you put your foot down on the throttle pedal, the RPMs just shoot up and they stay there, so it does produce quite an annoying droning sound. Additionally, this eCVT does not replicate virtual gears. So, like I said, very annoying sound whenever you put your foot down. When you're just poodling around town though, the electric motor is more than powerful enough to get this truck going off the line. That is at a much slower pace than if the engine were to turn on. But you can accelerate from a stop to say 60-ish kilometers an hour just on the electric motor. But on highways, I have noticed that the engine tends to run a lot more than just the electric powertrain. The engine does recharge the hybrid battery, but it also gets recharged through regenerative braking. The Maverick doesn't have different regen modes, but if you press the L button on the gear selector, then you do get a stronger regen force. It's not quite one pedal driving because you still do need to use the actual brake pedal, but it's pretty close. Additionally, when you are going downhill, the truck is smart enough to notice that it is going downhill, so it does automatically provide more regen braking even if you don't have the L selected on the gear selector. One thing that has changed with this hybrid powertrain is the fact that you can have it now as both front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Before, it was only front-wheel drive, so if you wanted an all-wheel drive Maverick, you had to go for the 2-liter turbo engine. But that's no longer the case. It's not a very sophisticated all-wheel drive system, but at least if you live in a part of the world where you do see quite a bit of snow, it just makes it a bit easier to get out of the snow. Of course, one of the main reasons why you'd want to consider the hybrid powertrain is the fuel economy that it can return. Officially, it is rated for 5.6 liters per 100 kilometers in the city and 6.7 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. Better yet, if you're gentle with the throttle inputs and you don't drive like as though you have a bee stuck up your bottom, then you can get better fuel economy than what it's rated for. With the all-wheel drive system of this Lariat Maverick, I've been averaging 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers. However, if the hybrid powertrain is too slow for your liking, then you can get the Ford Maverick with the 2-liter turbocharged gasoline-only engine. Just like the hybrid, it produces the same amount of power as before, 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. However, you can now choose to have this engine on the base trim level. Before, that wasn't an option. In a compact truck of this size, with this 2-liter turbo engine, it gives you a good kick to the backside every time that you put your foot down. It builds up boost quickly, and it really gets this Maverick going. This engine makes some pretty good noises too. Every time you put your foot down, you can hear the turbocharger spool up and sucking in air. And then every time you let go of the throttle pedal, you hear the blow-off valve go off. Mind you, it's not too loud. You do have to turn down the radio in order to hear these noises, but you can hear them. Paired with this engine is an 8-speed automatic transmission, which shifts gears very smoothly. It's not the fastest to react whether you put your foot down or you decide to take over control with the paddle shifters, even in sport mode. However, you at least have control over this transmission, not unlike the Ford Mustang EcoBoost with its 10-speed automatic. But with this 2-liter turbo engine, you are trading more power and more speed for less fuel economy. In this Tremor trim, it's rated for 11.2 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. If you do option the Maverick with this engine in one of the other trims, like the Lobo or the Lariat, then the fuel economy does get marginally better. Nevertheless, I've been averaging 10.1 liters per 100 kilometers with this Tremor. The Ford Maverick drives more like a small crossover SUV than a truck on city streets. The steering has a bit of heft to it when turning, but it's by no means too heavy in feel. Body roll is about the same as in a crossover SUV, with it being a little bit less evident in the Tremor trim due to its stiffer off-road focused suspension. Both the hybrid and turbo powertrains of the Ford Maverick have a 1,500 pound payload rating. They both also have the same 2,000 pounds towing capability, but if the trucks are optioned with the 4K towing package, the max tow rating increases to 4,000 pounds. The bed of the Maverick is 4.5 feet long, it has LED bed lights, a 12-volt plug, and can be equipped with a 110-volt plug as well. Another change for the 2025 Ford Maverick is the addition of 2 new trims. This one is obviously the Tremor, and it's the off-road version of the Maverick, which includes a 1-inch lift, knobbly all-terrain tires, a locking rear differential, as well as a locking center differential, so it can split the power equally between the front and rear wheels. And it also has trail control, which is like slow-speed off-road cruise control. The other is called the Lobo, which is more of a street-focused type of trim. So it includes a 1-inch lowering kit, 19-inch aero-style wheels, more street-focused suspension, and a real torque vectoring system via a twin-clutch rear differential. So now if you want to do a bit more light off-roading, you can do it with this Tremor, or if you want to stick to on-road driving, you can do it with the Lobo. Important thing to note is that both of these new trims are only available with the 2-liter turbocharged engine. The ride of the Ford Maverick is a tad on the firmer side. The front-wheel drive variants of the Maverick Hybrid have torsion beam suspension, which is designed to be cost-effective, but not so good when it comes to performance and comfort. The all-wheel drive variants of the Maverick have multi-link rear suspension, which not only improves performance, but also a little bit of the ride comfort. What was easily noticeable in driving these two demo trucks back to back was that the ride of the Tremor was a bit more jittery on roads than that of the Hybrid. The cabin of the Maverick Hybrid is a pretty quiet place. While cruising on a highway, the engine is quiet, wind noise is minimal, and road noise from the tires is acceptable. When accelerating from a stop in the city, the engine is much more noticeable though. In the Tremor, there is a lot more road noise due to the all-terrain tires. In the front seats, the Maverick is just as spacious as other crossover SUVs. Legroom and headroom is plentiful even for tall adults like me at 6'4". The back seats, however, are much tighter not only compared to the front seats, but also compared to some other smaller trucks like the Hyundai Santa Cruz. For someone like me, I do not want to be stuck there for very long. The rear bench lifts up to reveal a little bit of storage space, but it's not a split bench design. In addition to the new trims of the 2025 Maverick, the interior also gets a big change. Gone is the small infotainment touchscreen, and it is replaced by a standard 13.2-inch touchscreen. Sadly, with the addition of this larger screen, Ford has taken away all of the physical buttons that the Maverick once had. Climate controls, radio controls, and heated seat controls are all now integrated into the touchscreen. Yes, this new Maverick does retain a volume knob, but the buttons, quote-unquote, that are next to it are capacitive touch and not individual buttons like the pre-facelift version. I find the integration of commonly used functions into the touchscreen to be more distracting while driving, and I wish that Ford didn't take away all of the physical controls. Another change, to reduce costs for the brand and not necessarily for the consumer, is the 8-inch screen for the driver instrumentation. Again, the pre-facelift version had analog dials which, in my opinion, looked better than the simple screen that it now has. Otherwise, the rest of the interior of the 2025 Maverick remains the same. There are little spaces for small item storage throughout the cabin for change, parking tickets, cell phones, etc. The materials are okay, but some of the plastics do feel cheap. The Tremor trim adds orange highlights, and the half door handles remain on all trims. One of the main reasons why the Ford Maverick was such a popular vehicle back in 2022 was because of its starting price. It used to start at just under $27,000 Canadian, which was about 20,000 American. And that was for the hybrid version. If you wanted the 2-liter turbo engine, it was actually more expensive. Things, however, are very different now in 2025. The hybrid starts at $34,600, and if you want the 2-liter turbo, it'll cost you an extra $500. This Lariat hybrid is about $46,500 Canadian, and the Tremor that I'm also driving is just over $48,000 Canadian. So this little truck is no longer that inexpensive. The base XL trim of the Maverick doesn't get a whole lot in terms of gadgets and gizmos. It's basically a fleet type of vehicle with a new, larger 13.2-inch touchscreen, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration, Bluetooth, single-zone manual air conditioning, manual 6-way driver's seat and 4-way passenger seat, Wi-Fi hotspot, power locks and power windows, a 6-speaker audio system, and LED headlights. Adding on some of the convenience packages or moving up to this Lariat or Tremor trims will add features such as heated front seats along with a heated steering wheel, power sunroof, dual zone automatic climate controls, 8-way power driver's seat, wireless phone charging pad, push button start and keyless entry, and surround view cameras. So in 2025, is the Ford Maverick still one of the hottest vehicles to get your hands on? It's more of a lukewarm type of vehicle to get your hands on, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, it still is a very good truck, and you do have more options in terms of different powertrains to get on different trim levels. Plus, you do have these two new trims to choose from, the Tremor and the Lobo. But it is significantly more expensive than it was 3 years ago. The starting price now is pretty much the same as a very well-equipped compact car. So it is a lot of money, almost $35,000 Canadian just for the base version of the Maverick, never mind these higher end trims. So that's why I'm saying it's a lukewarm type of vehicle to get your hands on. Still great, but just a lot more expensive. However, if you would like to know more about the two Mavericks that I featured in this video, I have a more detailed written review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car, truck, or most likely it'll be an SUV next time. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.